Hello and welcome back to Live from Paris. It's time now for business news, and Owen's here. Hello, Owen. Right, so we're going to start off with the day's trading. Pretty flat so far, but the Nikkei did close with a few gains.
Yeah, just the standout market on the Asian markets, Lorna, as you say. A lot of profit taking going on across Wall Street and indeed Asia, but at least the Nikkei did manage to end the day just shy of 0.5% up. You can see the rest of the market's a little bit choppy. Largely, it's the Japanese government's decision to continue with asset repurchase to the tune of 11 trillion yen that's helped drive the yen down to record lows once again against the dollar, 7-month lows against the dollar, helping those exporters and helping trading on the Nikkei overall this Thursday.
Okay, and we've got some market moving figures out later that will give Europe a bit of a dilemma.
Yeah, these will be the big headline numbers today, Lorna, from the EU. These are their revised growth figures for 2012 and 2013. Why do we care about more growth figures coming out from the EU? Well, because they're likely to be revised downwards, and that's after growth for 2012 at least was already only around 0.5%, pretty anemic. And remember that growth in Europe as a whole was down by some 0.3%. In the last quarter of 2011, so already things not looking very rosy. It puts pressure as well on the EU. Remember, it's just with the European Central Bank and the IMF, Europe has just shelled out 130 billion euros to save Greece. So it's already, a lot of these Eurozone countries are stretching their budgets once again when they really shouldn't be, at a time when the EU is trying to clamp down on budget deficits and get these individual member states just to stop spending, cut back a little bit and bring those deficits down. And yet the pressure will be on the EU, the same organisation which is putting out these figures, to actually give countries like Spain maybe a little bit more breathing room. Already Spain have missed their deficit reduction targets. The smart money says that the EU will have to give some of these countries just a little bit more breathing room and maybe a little bit more time, maybe a year or so, to bring down their deficits to avoid them going to the wall.
Okay. We're going to move away from Europe now to Asia and ask whether the continent's booming airlines have overreached themselves. India's low-cost carrier, Kingfisher, is fighting to avoid bankruptcy, and one of its major competitors, AirAsia, has just seen its profits halved, having already decided to stop flying to the subcontinent. And yet, companies like AirAsia are still loading up on new planes. So what's gone wrong? William Edwards has been finding out.
Passengers wait for news on whether or not they'll be getting off the ground. Kingfisher cancelled at least 20 flights on Wednesday, and the Indian government says it won't be bailing the company out, hoping that private investors will step in instead. As well as the cancellations, staff aren't being paid, and some pilots have walked out.
I've been assured by the management that the December salaries will be cleared by the end of February. And by March 20th, they will be able to clear the salary arrears of January.
The company blames its cash flow crisis on a dispute with the tax authorities, but cutthroat competition and high fuel prices haven't helped. 5 out of India's top 6 carriers are currently losing money, while the wider Asian market is also seeing difficulties. Just last week, Air Australia went bust after it ran out of money to refuel its aircraft, leaving one plane and its passengers stranded on the tarmac at Phuket Airport. Malaysian carrier AirAsia has also seen profits take a hit. It was only last year that it made what was at the time the largest ever order for civilian aircraft. There's clearly still some optimism in the Asian market, though. Indonesia's Lion Air has placed orders with Boeing and the Franco-Italian manufacturer ATR this month that have surpassed AirAsia's 2011 record.
Just while we're talking airlines and India, worth noting that India has become the latest emerging country to oppose the EU's new carbon emission trading scheme. This was brought in early this year to charge all airlines flying in and out of the EU for the amount of carbon they emit, with credit schemes up and running. And yet already the US, China and indeed Russia have said they will not sign up to this. It's getting a little bit nasty as well. The Russians in particular are saying that should the EU press ahead with enforcing this charge on Russian airlines, they will retaliate potentially by charging EU airlines to fly over places like Siberia, and may pull out of any future negotiations for new routes concerning EU airlines. So we'll keep an eye on that one for you and the developments on that. Let's leave the airlines alone for a moment and pick up on one or two more of the day's business headlines for you, starting with US President Barack Obama, who has announced a cut to corporate tax as part of a pre-election fiscal reform plan. Obama wants to reduce corporate tax from the current rate of 35% to 28%, but also close a number of loopholes that his administration calls fundamentally unfair. Leading Republican contender Mitt Romney has proposed a 25% corporate tax rate, while other challengers want to bring it down as low as 12.5%.
Warner Music Group is trying to upstage Vivendi's bid for British record label EMI. That's according to Bloomberg sources. The US firm is believed to be lobbying EU and US competition authorities so it can block Vivendi's $2 billion buyout of EMI. Opponents of the Vivendi deal say it would give its own music label, Universal, an unfair position in the industry.
And HP's profits have dropped for a second successive quarter. First quarter earnings for the world's largest personal computer manufacturer fell by 44%. PC sales alone were down by a quarter. CEO Meg Whitman says HP's computers haven't been compelling enough, in her words, to attract customers.
Now, Canada may be in a sticky situation over its oil production. A proposed EU law could label tar sands crude as more polluting than conventional forms of oil. It's likely to complicate trade relations between Europe and one of the world's most important energy producers. Siobhan Silk reports.
The oil here doesn't gush out of the ground. Instead, the semi-solid bitumen deposits must be mined out. Canada is home to the world's third largest oil reserves, but most are locked in the form of tar sands. The EU is set to vote on Thursday on a draft law that would label fuel produced from this oil more polluting than other types, a move Canada says could spark a trade war. Officials in the western province of Alberta, where some of the biggest oil sand deposits are found, say they're committed to exploiting the reserves.
We are going to responsibly extract and develop that resource. We have a responsibility to market that on behalf of Albertans. There's a net benefit for Canadians and North America as a whole.
But environmental experts say extracting and refining the highly viscous bitumen deposits is inherently more resource heavy and damaging than the processes used to access and treat other forms of crude oil.
The amount of land disturbance is magnified because you have to drill so many wells to get at a relatively small area of bitumen. It requires a huge amount of fresh water to turn it into steam, to inject it into the ground to get the bitumen out. And it requires an enormous amount of natural gas to create that steam in the first place, and then to drive the upgraders that eventually turn this stuff into something that can be actually used.
Canada argues the EU is unfairly discriminating against it. If the vote passes, it will be another blow to the Canadian oil industry after Washington cancelled a planned pipeline system that would have carried oil from the tar sand fields to the US. Canadian officials have told European commissioners they may take the matter to the World Trade Organization.
Now, finally, Owen, just to finish, we're going to talk about what could be perhaps the hottest trademark in the world right now. Tell us more.
It's got to be, Lorna, Linsanity. This is Jeremy Lin, the New York Knicks star, who's ignited this team's season over the past couple of months. Fans across the world, basketball fans across the world, cannot get enough of this guy right now, and he knows it too. And it's emerged that he has actually filed a trademark for that phrase, Linsanity, which you see on so many banners and T-shirts across the world right now. What's interesting, though, is Jeremy Lin will be up against another Californian fan who'd already filed a trademark for this name. Lin's lawyers think that Jeremy Lin perhaps has the edge over this because he's effectively exercising his intellectual property rights, all part of his marketing value and the amount of money which will run into many millions of dollars, as is expected over the rest of his career. So it's likely to end up in court between these two people. I think the smart money would say Jeremy Lin's probably going to edge that one.
Indeed, but rather a shame that he has to come to blows with one of his fans to do it. Thanks very much indeed, Owen, for that look at all today's business stories. That's all from us for now. Thanks for joining us, and don't go away. Claire Pride will be here with more news headlines right after the international weather. Next.